There comes a time that can come for many people, a strange, unexpected time. The things that once brought joy begin to lose their power. The music you loved no longer touches you deeply. Food no longer has that special taste. Being with friends feels empty. Even what you called your passion, reading, walking, creating, all of that begins to seem colorless, lifeless, without that spark that made it all worthwhile. And when that happens, fear comes. You think something is wrong, that you've become ill, that something is broken inside you. Maybe it's depression, you think. Maybe I've become bitter, too tired to feel anything. And the question arises urgently, what happened to me? Why can't I feel anymore? But what if I told you that this loss isn't a problem? What if this emptiness isn't the end, but a beginning? What if the absence of what you called joy is simply making room for something you don't yet recognize, because you're searching for old sensations, for the pleasures you once knew? Let me try to explain. Most of what we call happiness in ordinary life is actually relief. It's the feeling of filling something that was empty. You feel hungry and you eat. There is pleasure in that. But notice, pleasure depends on hunger. Without hunger, eating is just automatic. You feel lonely and someone gives you attention. There is joy. But joy depends on loneliness. Without lack, attention has no power. This is the pattern that ancient teachings call suffering. Not that everything is pain, but that this constant oscillation, wanting and receiving, feeling lack and fulfillment, is unstable. It is based on incompleteness, on always feeling that something is missing, that you are not enough as you are. So we spend our lives chasing small moments of relief, brief satisfactions when a need is met. We call this happiness, but at its core, it's just a temporary pause from discomfort, like someone hitting you on the head with a hammer and then suddenly stopping. You feel relief and you call it pleasure. But the real question is, why were they hitting you in the first place? Now, what happens to some people, and this is what's happening to you if you're experiencing this loss, is that they begin to see through this game. They begin to realize that all those pleasures they pursued were just escapes from discomfort. And once you see that, once you truly understand the old pleasures stop working, the relief is no longer satisfying because you've realized you're creating your own need for relief. It's like someone taking a substance to feel good, but the substance itself creates a need for more. The relief the person feels from using it is merely the interruption of withdrawal symptoms caused by the substance itself. When you see that pattern, everything falls apart. Pleasure loses its appeal because you've seen through it. This is what happened to you. You saw through the game of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. You recognized, perhaps not with your mind, but with your whole being, that all these joys were elaborate ways of escaping yourself, the present moment, what simply is. And now you're in a strange state. The old pleasures don't work. The old emotions don't thrill you. You've lost the ability to distract yourself, to be carried away from yourself by experiences and sensations. And that feels like death. It feels like something essential has been taken from you, as if you've become a ghost, going through life's movements without truly living. But you need to understand something fundamental. This state is not an end. It's a transition. It's the space between the old way of living and a new way that you haven't yet discovered. You are in the interval. And the interval is frightening because there's nothing to hold on to. The old structures have crumbled, but the new has not yet emerged. Imagine you've lived your whole life in a room lit by candles. The candlelight creates shadows on the wall, dancing shapes that fascinate you. You spend your time watching the shadows, being entertained by them, finding meaning in their patterns. These shadows are like the ordinary joys of life. They are real in their own way, but they are merely projections created by a limited light source. Now imagine someone opens a door and daylight streams in. At first, the light is so intense it almost hurts. You can't see anything clearly. Everything seems dim, and all those fascinating shadows that kept you entertained have completely disappeared in the bright light. You might think, this is terrible. I've lost all the interesting patterns. Everything has become dull, but you still can't see clearly. Your eyes haven't adjusted to the daylight. When they do, you'll realize you haven't lost anything. You've gained everything. Now you're seeing reality directly, not just its shadows. And this direct vision is much richer, much more real than the play of shadows you watched before. But it's a different kind of wealth. It doesn't have the same quality as shadows. It's not entertainment. It's something completely different. This is what happens when nothing brings joy anymore. The play of shadows has stopped working, but you still haven't learned to see in the light of day. You're in that transitional period where the old is gone, but the new isn't yet clear. And this period can last quite a while. It's not something you can rush. Your eyes need to adjust at their own pace. The common response to this state is to desperately try to recapture old joys. People throw themselves into new hobbies, new relationships, new experiences, hoping to rekindle that spark. Or they resort to stronger stimuli, louder music, more intense sensations, more dramatic experiences, like someone whose sense of taste has become dulled, trying increasingly stronger spices to feel anything. But that doesn't work. In fact, it makes things worse, because what's really needed isn't more stimulation, but less. What's needed is to stop running, stop searching, stop trying to fill the void with experiences and sensations. What's needed is simply to be with what is, without trying to transform it into something else. And here's the extraordinary thing that happens when you do that. When you stop trying to manufacture joy, you discover that there's something present that's always been there, but you never noticed it because you were too busy chasing pleasures. It's not exactly joy in the old sense. It's more like a fundamental acceptance, a deep sense that everything is right exactly as it is. Not that everything is perfect or pleasurable, but that it is complete. It is enough. It doesn't need anything added or removed. The old joys were based on contrast. Good times versus bad times, pleasure versus pain, excitement versus boredom. But this new state doesn't depend on contrast. It's there all the time. Whether things are going well or badly, whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, whether you're experiencing pleasure or pain. It's like discovering you've lived in a house your whole life, running from room to room looking for something, and suddenly realizing that what you were looking for was the house itself. It was always there, you were inside it, you are it, but you couldn't see it because you were too busy looking. Now, I need to warn you about something. When I describe this state as a fundamental acceptance, as a sense that everything is all right, you might think it sounds boring. You might think, is that all there is to it? Just being okay with things? It doesn't sound very exciting, and you're right. It's not exciting in the way that the old pleasures used to be. It doesn't have that quality of peak experience, of highs and lows, of drama and intensity. But here's what you need to understand. Emotion is exhausting. Drama is exhausting. The constant pursuit of peak experiences is exhausting. You can't live at that intensity all the time. What happens is that you have these brief moments of intensity and then long periods of deflation while waiting for the next peak. The lows get lower and lower, and you need increasingly stronger stimuli to reach those same peaks. This is the pattern of addiction, and most people are addicted to experience, to sensation, to the drama of their own lives. They are constantly generating problems in order to solve them, creating tension in order to release it, stirring up emotions in order to feel alive, and they call this joy. But it's just agitation. What you've lost when nothing brings you joy anymore is your addiction to that pattern. And like anyone going through withdrawal, you feel terrible. You feel empty, lifeless, dead. But what you're really experiencing is the absence of agitation. And at first, the absence of agitation feels like death, because you've been agitated for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to simply be at rest. Let me tell you about someone I knew. He was tremendously energetic, always doing something, always pursuing some new project or pleasure. He traveled constantly, collecting experiences like some people collect stamps, always reading, always learning, always seeking new sensations, and he was proud of it. He felt he was truly living, savoring every drop of life. Then something happened. I don't know exactly what, perhaps just the accumulation of years, and he lost his enthusiasm. All those activities that seemed so important suddenly seemed meaningless. Traveling bored him. Books couldn't hold his attention. All food tasted the same, and he became quite depressed about it. He thought his life was over, that he had grown old and worn out. But then, after some time in that state, something changed. He told me that one day he was sitting in his garden, doing nothing in particular, just sitting. And suddenly he realized that he was completely content, not excited, not entertained, just simply content, present there. And he understood that all that previous rushing around had been a way of escaping. He was afraid of simply being here, so he filled his life with constant activity and stimulation to avoid it. And now that all the activity had subsided, he discovered what he had been running from. Just this moment, this breath, this simple fact of being alive. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything, but it wasn't exciting or dramatic. So his mind had dismissed it as nothing, as emptiness, as death. Only when he stopped demanding that life be exciting did he discover that life is extraordinary in its ordinariness. That's what I'm trying to point you towards. When nothing brings joy in the old way, you're being invited to discover a different quality of experience. Not the highs and lows of pleasure and pain, but something more subtle, more constant, more fundamental. But you can't force this discovery. You can't make it happen. In fact, trying to make it happen is exactly what prevents it. It's like trying to fall asleep. The more you try, the more awake you become. You have to give up trying. You have to surrender to not knowing, to not feeling, to this apparent emptiness, and that is perhaps the most difficult thing anyone can be asked to do. Because we are so afraid of emptiness. We think emptiness is death. It is meaninglessness. It is the absence of life. But in truth, emptiness is potential. It is the space in which something new can emerge. As long as you are filled with searching and striving and trying to recapture old joys, there is no room for anything new. You need to become empty. Not empty in a negative sense, but empty as a bowl is empty. Empty so it can receive. Empty so it can be filled, but not filled with old things. Filled with something for which you don't yet have a name. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. You wanted me to tell you how to regain your joy, how to feel things again the way you used to. But I can't say that, because what you're experiencing isn't a problem to be solved. It's a transition to go through. Like a caterpillar dissolving into its cocoon before becoming a butterfly, the caterpillar is finished. It can't go back to being a happy caterpillar, but it's not a butterfly yet. It's just a shapeless mass. And if the mass could think, it would probably be very distressed by its condition. You are this mass now, and I'm telling you, this is not a mistake. This is the process. Stay with it. Don't try to escape it. Don't try to fabricate false joys to fill the void. Just be with what is. Be with the superficiality, the lack of color, the apparent emptiness of meaning. Let it be exactly as it is, without trying to fix it, understand it, or transform it into something else. And gradually, not according to your schedule, but in your own time, something will change. Not back to the old way, but forward, towards something new. A new way of experiencing life that doesn't depend on contrast, that doesn't require stimulation, that finds sufficiency in the simple fact of existing. This is what mystics have always pointed to. Not some ecstatic state of constant bliss, that's just another form of the old quest, but a profound acceptance that persists through all states, pleasant and unpleasant alike, a recognition that you are in the deepest sense well. Not because everything in your life is going well, but because your life, your existence, is fundamentally complete, exactly as it is. The old joys were like trying to improve a sunset by adding more colors to it. The new understanding is that the sunset is already perfect. It needs no improvement. It needs nothing added or taken away. It is complete in itself, and you are too. And this moment is too, and your life is too, even in this seemingly joyless state. But I must emphasize again, you cannot make that realization happen. You cannot reach that state. Any effort to get there pushes you away, because effort implies that something is missing, that you are not yet complete. Recognition can only come when you stop trying, when you give up, when you completely surrender to what is, and even then it may not come, or it may come and go, or it may come in such a subtle way that you don't even notice it at first. It's not dramatic, it's not exciting, it doesn't look like you thought the lighting would. It's more like coming home, like taking off tight shoes, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. So what do you do in the meantime? While you're in this state where nothing brings joy, you do what needs to be done. You brush your teeth, you eat your meals, you take care of your daily tasks, but you do it without expecting these activities to make you happy. You do them simply because they are what needs to be done, not with resignation or bitterness, but with a kind of neutral acceptance. And you observe this state it's in, without judging it, without trying to change it. You become interested in it, curious about it, not in a clinical way, but with the kind of interest you might have when watching clouds moving across the sky. Just observing, without needing the clouds to be different from what they are. And most importantly, you stop comparing. Stop comparing your current state to how you used to feel. Stop comparing yourself to people who seem to be having fun. Stop comparing this moment to some imagined future moment when everything will be better. Just be here now with what is. This isn't resignation. It's not giving up. In fact, it's the opposite. It's fully embracing your life as it truly is, instead of constantly wishing it were different. And paradoxically, it's only when you stop wishing things were different that anything can truly change. Because what's blocking the new experience, the new way of being, is your insistence that things should be as they were before. Your nostalgia for past joys, your memory of how things used to look, your expectation that life should return to that familiar pattern. All of this is preventing you from seeing what is truly here. Let me offer one final thought. Perhaps the reason nothing brings you joy anymore is that you've outgrown joy as you knew it. Perhaps you've become too big for those small pleasures, too deep for those superficial satisfactions. Not because you're better than other people, but simply because your consciousness has expanded, and the old vessels can no longer contain what you've become. A child is enchanted by sweets. A young person is thrilled by romance and adventure. A mature person finds satisfaction in achievements and recognition. But there comes a point for some people when all these things are seen through, when they are recognized as temporary, conditional, ultimately unsatisfying. And then what? Then you're thrown back into existence itself, to the simple fact of being alive, of being conscious, of being here. And that may seem like nothing compared to the thrill of sweets, romance, and accomplishments, but in truth, it is everything. It is the soil from which all those other things sprang. It is what was there before you learned to seek pleasure and avoid pain. It is what remains when all seeking ceases. And it's nothing. It's not emptiness in a negative sense. It's fullness, it's wholeness, it's completeness. But it's so simple, so common, so undramatic, that the mind constantly overlooks it, always searching for something more exciting, more stimulating, more special. What you are being invited to discover is that there is nothing more special than this moment, this breath, this simple fact of being alive. Not because it makes you feel good, not because it's pleasurable, but because it's real. It is what it is, and what is enough. It always has been enough. You just forgot for a while. So when nothing brings joy, don't despair. You haven't lost your capacity to feel. You've lost your addiction to a particular kind of feeling, and in that loss, there's an opening, possibility, a door to a different way of being human. Go through that door. Not by trying to go through it, but by standing still and discovering that you're already on the other side. You've always been on the other side. You just didn't realize it because you were too busy looking. Now you have nothing left to chase, and that's not a loss. It's the greatest gift you could receive.